We're all looking forward to Persona 6. Yeah, totally get that. But for all you Persona and Shin Megami Tensei fans out there, definitely do not overlook Atlus's upcoming Metaphor ReFantazio, as this massive new game from the creative legends who worked on the last several Persona games are creating something that is both very similar to those games and also wholly unique. Metaphor takes all of Persona's defining elements, from the social sim aspects, battle system, calendar and time elements, and more, and expands upon all these things in new and exciting ways that help distinguish this game from the rest of Atlus's premier JRPG juggernaut franchise. And word on the street is that this game, Metaphor, is way more than just a super stylish spin-off of Persona. It's a JRPG that is likely to be more than worth your time when it releases this October, so let's explore the key areas that help set this title apart from the rest of Persona and JRPGs alike. I'm also giving away the most complete digital edition of this game in my giveaway, so be sure to participate in this ongoing giveaway linked in the description. On the surface level, you've got that classic Atlus art style here in full display. Stylish action, menus and user interfaces, turn-based combat, a calendar system, tons of dungeons, social sim elements, and so much more that Metaphor shares with its Persona siblings. But the first big difference between the two that is immediately apparent lies in the setting. The Persona series expertly navigates the youthful high school setting across various locations within Japan, with each game focusing on one singular location. But Metaphor instead opts for a high fantasy setting that sees its cast of characters travel all over the game world, and not solely pinned down to just one spot. Let's first dive into Metaphor's story, as the game's setting and tone shapes up the numerous systems that we see throughout this sprawling adventure. The title is set in a medieval fantasy realm in the United Kingdom of Uchronia, and this realm serves as a mirror to the modern world of reality. Things seem to be going great in the kingdom until one day its king is assassinated, sparking chaos and unrest throughout the land. The events would then set the stage for a tournament to take place across the land to decide the throne's successor, and that's where our main protagonist comes in, and this protagonist is fully voiced. A boy of a tribe ostracized by much of society for having an affinity with an ancient and forbidden magic, we embark on a quest to lift a curse placed on his childhood friend, who happens to be the Prince of Uchronia, who had just laid witness to his father's assassination. The game sees us travel throughout the lands, recruiting a variety of allies determined to restore peace to the nation and unearth the mysteries of the nation's hostile underbelly, threatening to destroy it all. This game's fantasy setting is considered the mirror to the contemporary backdrop of the real world, with Metaphor's developers aiming to provide even more focus on the human condition through an epic fantasy adventure that contrasts with modern-day society. Alright, so we've established the core narrative here in Metaphor, including how the game's protagonist is fully voiced, something very different from the Persona series. But very much in line with it is the game's investment in its cast of characters and its social sim elements. Ever since Persona 3 introduced the social link system, this aspect of the Persona games has been celebrated far and wide for its role in expanding the protagonist's relationships with the game's sidecast, while also directly benefiting the game's combat systems. Here in Metaphor, these social sim elements from the Persona series remains intact, giving players ample opportunities to develop their friendships further. What may be a huge disappointment for some is the fact that, in Metaphor, players will be unable to romance any of the game's wide cast of characters, as director Katsura Hashino told IGN that he wanted to avoid making a, quote, romance game. We made Persona as an RPG story about teenagers, and teenagers, they date, they have romance, Hashino told IGN. That's part of the joy of being a young person exploring your boundaries, so that's why we included it in the game. For our new game, we didn't want to include it because it didn't feel as natural, if that makes sense. Hashino continues with, the main plot focus is that there's this character, the protagonist, who is trying to become the next king, and rather than focusing on his love life, we wanted to make sure we have this whole follower system. We wanted people to focus on that. This follower system is essentially the social link or confidant system from the Persona games, and while this game's focus on recruiting allies to fight for the protagonist may exclude romance in service of keeping the focus on the game's story, I know that a lot of Persona fans out there are not too pleased to hear about the lack of romance in Metaphor. Let me know your thoughts in the comments if this is a big L or perhaps a big W in your book. As for me, I'm just happy to see social sim elements make their way to the game, and I will reserve further judgment on the lack of romancing until I finish it. Persona truly excels at providing a welcoming sense of place that feels like home across the year that the game takes place in. While Persona is famous for its extensive near-year-long in-game stories, Metaphor ReFantazio includes a calendar system of its own, having players interact with extensive sidecasts throughout this massive JRPG for extended periods of time. While the Persona series lays home to a number of cozy resting spots to sleep and for players to interact with their companions, so too does Metaphor with the Gauntlet Runner. This massive multi-room and multi-level machine serves double duty as a transportation vehicle as well as a place to catch one's breath and hang out with the game's cast, read books, further develop one's skills and the like while en route to the next destination. Like the Dojima residence is to Persona 4 and the Iwatodai dorm is to Persona 3, for example, the Gauntlet Runner is the home for the protagonist and his followers, and a place we will be coming back to more and more throughout Metaphor. Because this is a game that takes us to numerous places across the map, you wouldn't be alone if you wondered why we wouldn't be staying at inns throughout the lands, and director Hoshino believes that the spirit of a globe-trotting journey would be best emphasized when including a vehicle such as the Gauntlet Runner. With new locations come new cultures, new people, new landscapes, and the like, and by having a base of operations that the game's cast can truly call home, according to Hoshino, the Gauntlet Runner ultimately serves as a way to unify all that. In regards to the calendar system, Hoshino explains that this is the area that really gives the player an incredible amount of freedom, as players will need to think about where to go and how to spend their time. In the Persona series, you have a certain amount of time to complete each of the game's dungeons, giving you deadlines frequently throughout the story to make sure certain story beats are met before moving on to the next one. During this time, players are free to spend their days in a variety of ways, hang out with friends to boost their links, engage in activities to boost their stats, and tackle dungeons to get stronger while making progress in the story to take bites off those impending deadlines. While Metaphor very much contains this gameplay loop, due to the much more open nature of the game with an incredible amount and variety of places to travel to outside of the mandatory areas, there is just so much more to see and do here during your free time. Imagine if you go on vacation, says Hoshino when talking to GameSpot during Summer Game Fest. You go to a city and have 10 places listed on your travel log. Some of these might take 2 days to enjoy, whereas others might take half a day. Maybe you can't do it all in just one trip. In this game, you travel a lot, and when you get to your destinations, you have a choice of multiple dungeons you can do. And these dungeons have different difficulty levels as well, so it's up to you how to choose to spend your time. In this way, there's a lot more freedom. In addition to these dungeons, you have cities to explore, new NPCs to meet, friendships to make, and more opportunities to increase both your social attributes and your battle stats, so there is quite a wealth of activities to partake in before the story forces the player to the next area to meet each main narrative beat. Speaking of dungeons, it is impossible to do all of them in one playthrough, according to Hoshino, simply due to the sheer size of the game world and the limited amount of time you have to travel to each of them. That said, once in dungeons or on the field do we see the other main facet of the game, combat, come into play. Combat in Metaphor ReFantazio on the surface looks incredibly similar to the recent Persona games, with their streamlined menus and flashy transitions very much on full display here. The game primarily operates in turn-based battles, called command battles, where party characters issue battle commands to overcome encounters with the game's enemies. What distinguishes Metaphor from its Persona relatives lies primarily in its Archetypes system, where each party character can assume multiple different archetypes, or classes, that drastically alter each character's attacks and abilities on the battlefield. Certain archetypes are better suited for defensive capabilities, while others promote powerful offensive attacks and spells. With more than 40 archetypes to explore here in Metaphor, there are an insane amount of party setups that one can employ here, so it's really exciting to see just how extensive this game's combat is likely to end up being. Just like Persona 2 and the Persona Q series, players will be able to orient their party in either the front row or the back row, with this positioning being critical to the player's battle strategy. party. Typically, party members in the front row are often there to inflict greater amounts of physical damage on the opposition, yet they often become the victim of receiving such attacks as well. Those placed in the rear are commonly assigned to the support roles, like healers, or offensive magic casters and classes that employ ranged attacks so that they can support an attack at a distance. This placement element promises to add yet another element of complexity and strategy to an already stacked combat system chock full of unique elements. The key in Metaphor is to strengthen these archetypes across your battle party to create different strategies to overcome the game's challenging encounters. And according to Ashino, the game has been intentionally made a bit harder than some of the more recent Persona games to reflect the dynamism put on these archetypes in party combinations. With these new intricate systems, to Ashino, it demands a certain level of challenge, but even though the developers say that the challenge will be a slight bump above the Persona games, it's worth pointing out that Metaphor does include multiple difficulty levels, so players can adjust the difficulty to their preferences here. In addition to the game's turn-based battling, the protagonist can enter into real-time combat on the field, making quick work of lower-leveled enemies so as not to bring the game's pace to a grinding halt. If engaging in real-time combat on the field with equal-leveled or higher-leveled enemies, however, attacking these enemies builds up a stagger bar, and once full, the game will shift into its turn-based command battle mode, giving the player a free attack on the enemy before the battle starts proper. I think it's really cool to see this blend of real-time combat mixed in with the turn-based system, as it gives us more of a tactical option when looking at these battles. It's certainly unique, and I hope the real-time combat doesn't quickly feel like a gimmick, but definitely let me know what your thoughts are on this element being weaved into a traditionally turn-based battle RPG. And those are but a few key areas that distinguish Metaphor ReFantazio from the rest of Persona and other JRPGs out there. This will no doubt be one of the lengthier JRPGs, rivaling the lengths of the recent mainline Persona games, and with over 40 archetypes, a massive, sprawling world to explore that one can't simply see it all in one playthrough, and with robust social sim elements returning here, Metaphor is the perfect game for fans of JRPGs, and specifically Persona fans, to play later this year, to hold us over to Persona 6. Now I'm going to turn this over to you. What are you most excited about in Metaphor ReFantazio? Be sure to participate in my giveaway and check out this video containing absolutely everything we know about Persona 6. With that, I'll see you real soon next time.